From the Atlantic Ocean to the Mediterranean Sea, from the Strait of Gibraltar to the Bay of Biscay, the Iberian Peninsula is home to two wonderful nations of Spain and Portugal, two countries rich in history, culture, music and of course video games. That's right, just as I did for Italy, in today's video I'm going to list and discuss all games set in both Portugal and Spain, remarking how they depict the cities and locations within them. Before starting, however, it is important that I make clear my guidelines. In this list I will exclude games that are set in fictional locations of Iberia. Games that fall into this category are for example Sonic Unleashed, Alba and Pokemon Scarlet Violet, all amazing games that are yet hard to point to a specific location. There are few exceptions to this rule, but I tried to keep it as specific as possible. I will also be excluding sports, mostly football stadiums, because there are too many and this video would never end. In contrast to the other video, this time I decided not to exclude strategy games and games set in vast areas, but I will mention them in the last part of the video. I will list games where Spain and Portugal are protagonists of the game or DLC, where the countries within them are playable and important for the campaign. Without further premises, let us get started. Bom dia and bem-vindos in Portugal. One of the oldest countries in the European continent gladly hosts a good amount of games from many different genres. In my research I found more than I'm bargained for, and I'm glad to share all locations present in the Portuguese nation. Starting off in the Atlantic Ocean in the Azores, Terceira Island is home to LucasArts' graphic adventure Indiana Jones and the Fate of Atlantis. Here, the American archaeologist explores the island in depth in one of the chapters to find clues of the legendary Atlantis. The game might be a bit old school, but nonetheless, the small Atlantic Isle makes an important appearance and kicks off this list with grace. Moving to the mainland and traveling from north to south, we will find two different rally games set in the northern region of Portugal, Dirt Rally 2 and WRC10, with the roads of Montalegre and Matosinhos. Starting with the former, Montalegre is well depicted in Dirt Rally 2, being a very frenetic and technical circuit, with many opportunities for drivers to show off their skills. The latter rally takes place over many locations, starting in Cabeceira Sebasto and finishing in Matosinhos, near Porto. The game lets you race in the Portuguese rally from start to end, exploring the beautiful Portuguese landscapes and countryside along the way. But do be careful when driving, however, the smallest of mistakes can cost you the rally. Living in the north and entering the central region of Portugal, MXGP offers us one of the circuits in the motocross category in Agueda, in the Aveiro province. Not gonna lie, I do not know much about motocross, but I do know that the circuit of Agueda is one of the hardest in the franchise and one of the most beloved. But I did this information from a Portuguese person, so I might be biased. But let's move away from the road. Let us go surfing in the spectacular beaches of Peniche in the Roll Surf series official video game. As you can expect, the game takes place in one of the most untamed and wild places to surf, the Atlantic Ocean, where waves can reach colossal sizes in the distance. Portugal hosts many surfers every year, and in this game, you can be one of them. Speaking of seaside, in Ubisoft game Tom Clancy Endworld, the Americans land in Portugal to start their world invasion, and the Arrabida Serra is the battlefield where titans clash. This patch of land south of Lisbon will be key to face off the war. Be sure to protect it at all costs. But the outskirts of Lisbon do not only host battles in the field, but also battles on the racetrack. That's right, we are racing in the famous Estoril circuit, home to the Portuguese Grand Prix in the 80s and 90s and still hosting races for the other categories. The Fernanda Rieves da Silva Autodrome is historic and home to many great duels of the past, a fantastic 14-turn racetrack present in countless games like the one you see on screen. There may not be too many games set in Lisbon proper, but I think no Portuguese can forget the first act of Assassin's Creed Rogue, set in 1750s Lisboa. The city was splendid in her golden age, but unfortunately struck by one of the greatest natural disasters in 1755, known as the Great Lisbon Earthquake. The act takes place during the tragedy, key to the plot and to the franchise as a whole. A futuristic depiction of the splendid city of Lisbon is given by Blizzard in her upcoming Overwatch 2, where Lisbon hosts one of the battlefields. The game will soon be released, but from the various gameplay trailers we can already spot St. Mary's Major's Cathedral and Jerominos Monastery. I cannot wait to play the majestic capital with creation. To wrap up the list, we find the current host of the Portuguese Grand Prix, none other than the Algarve International Circuit, perhaps better known as the name of its hosting city of Portimao. Does Portimao need any explanation? One of the most technical circuits in the calendar, perhaps not yet legendary as its predecessor, in my opinion is a fantastic autodrome to race in, and hopefully will give many splendid races in the future. And there you have it, all games set in Portugal, or at least for now. But don't go anywhere because there is still the second half of this video, where we'll be exploring Portugal's neighbor to the east, the mighty Kingdom of Spain. Buenos días y bienvenidos a España. Just like its neighbor to the west, Spain is a country that shaped world history and, to the purpose of this video, hosts many video game settings all across its unique communities that form the Iberian Kingdom. Starting off once again with the Atlantic Ocean, Ride Free sets one of its longest circuits in the beautiful Tenerife, one of the Canary Islands. The wild African island is depicted majestically and it is always a joy to race around with a trusted Ducati or Kawasaki. Still in the Canary Islands, Tourist Bus Simulator is set its entirety in Fuerteventura. From Colarejo to Costa Calma, the entirety of the island can be explored in a nice pace with a bus, traveling passengers all across the dazzling island. Landing in the mainland, 007 The World Is Not Enough starts in a hotel in Bilbao. Just like in the movie, James Bond is there to conduct an important meeting where, as usual, something does not go as planned. The hotel where the first act of the game takes place might be fictitious, but the Guggenheim Museum seen in the background clearly indicate Bond finds himself in the Basque capital. Spain has made the habit to be the first act in more than one game. In Assassin's Creed Brotherhood's prologue and Chapter 9, Ezio Auditore di Firenze finds himself in the Viana Siege, Navarre, where he comes face to face with the mighty Cesare Borgia. What happens next I will not tell you, but what is important for today's video is to know that you take part in the Iberian conflict. Still in Navarre, even if it's not specified specifically where, the Call of Duty World War II zombie mode map Bodega Cervantes is set somewhere in the northern Spain. In this game mode, as you can probably guess, you fight waves of undead Axis forces in the small destroyed Spanish town. Moving to the Aragon region, Assassin's Creed Discovery for the DS sets part of its adventure in the region capital of Zaragoza. The graphical quality of its portable entry is not par with the mainline titles, yet the 2D depiction of the city is not far off for Renaissance Spain. Within the Aragonese borders, fans of MotoGP find themselves home in the Motorland Aragon, but are known as Alcañiz circuit. Many are the sharp turns that require precision and technique to soar past without falling down. The circuit hosts the Aragonese Grand Prix and it is always a joy to see it in the calendar. Moving from Aragon to Catalonia, I think it is no surprise to hear that Barcelona hosts a multitude of games in its beautiful street. The one that comes to mind immediately is Ubisoft's Wheelman, an open-world GTA-style game set in the Catalan capital. Even if the game did not receive the best reception, the city was made fully explorable for the player and many are the landmarks visible in the game, such as Plaza Catalunya and La Sagrada Familia. Other games that take place in Barcelona are Assassin's Creed Discovery, GoldenEye 007, Tony Hawk's Underground 2, Gotham Project Racing, and GP Racing 2. These 5 games have all different takes on the city. AC has its 2D version in the Renaissance like we saw in Zaragoza, GoldenEye 007 has a mission in the nightclub like we saw in Bilbao, Tony Hawk's is a skateboard park and the 2 racing games circuit located in Barcelona's Avenue. All of these 5 games do somewhat a good job at depicting the capital of Catalonia, and all deserve to be mentioned in this list. Just outside of Barcelona, we can find the city of Olmeo, where the famous circuit of Barcelona-Catalunya is located. Hosting a Spanish Grand Prix from the 90s, the circuit is one of the most tire-intensive in the whole calendar, with changes in elevations and long turns after long turns. Coincidentally, it does have a very similar shape to the already seen Portimao in neighboring Portugal. Just like other games on the list, the first act of Resident Evil 4 is set in a Spanish village, northeast of the country, in a haunted, zombie-infected village, where our hero, Leon Kennedy, is assigned a very special mission. Just as a reminder for all fans of the saga, the remake will be out soon, in March 2023. From the north to the center, we reach the kingdom's capital of Madrid, one of the biggest metropolitan areas in Europe, and what a better way to explore it than in Gran Turismo 5. The game makes a street circuit in the middle of the city that expands from Plaza del Sol to Fuente de Neptuno to end up in Puerta de Alcalá. GT has its own way to turn cities in tracks while keeping the beauty and the geometric intact, just like it did for Rome in the previous video. Still in the center of the country, we can roam around freely in the center of the nation. That's right, the small indie game Ovejas de Kilómetro Cero take place in the Plaza del Sol, where the player is tasked to catch escaping ships across the historic plaza. The game was made by a small team in only 2 weeks. The last game set in Madrid is Torrente Free, The Protector, a GTA wannabe that had, let's just say, not the toppest of qualities. Nonetheless, it is a free roaming game set in the Spanish capital, so it cannot be ignored that easily. The game takes place in the central part of the city, within Plaza Mayor and the other sided landmarks. The Valencia community appears multiple times in today's list, starting off in the city of Valencia herself. The European Grand Prix was briefly held in 2010 in Valencia Street Circuit near the Drassanes del Grau and the port of the city. The racetrack, while visually appealing, did not stick for the Formula 1 calendar and fell into disuse, with part of the track transformed into a normal city road. However, if you desire to race here one last time, you can put up an F1 game from 2008 to 2012 to experience the Valencia track. Not far from Valencia, we can find the town of Buñol, a city that has less than 10,000 inhabitants. But the city does have, however, its famous festival of La Tomatina, where people throw tomatoes like there is no tomorrow. Tekken 6 has one of its ring at the city core right in the middle of the festival, where NPCs can be seen throwing tomatoes in the background and covering the floors and roofs in red. Even if the Valencia Street Circuit is no more, the Valencia Ricardo Tormo Circuit in Este is still alive and well, hosting every year the MotoGP Valencian Grand Prix since 1999, often being a very last duel before the end of the season. I'm not an expert when it comes to motorbike races, but by just looking at the layout, I can imagine this track to be one hell of a fight. Speaking of fights, Call of Duty Black Ops 4 has its multiplayer map Seaside set in Altea, south of Valencia. Now, the game doesn't specify exactly the town the map is set in, but from what I read and saw, Seaside seems heavily inspired by Altea and surrounding towns in the Mediterranean coastline, hence the name. The town is pretty and a plus to play in, especially during the sunset. We finally have reached southern Spain and her famous region of Andalusia, and what a better way to introduce oneself in the region than by exploring the famous Alhambra in Granada, present in Assassin's Creed Brotherhood multiplayer map. The famous mosque is sublimely recreated arch by arch in the Ubisoft game and makes for a perfect setting to fight others online. Assassin's Creed Discovery also passes by Granada, but this time giving us yet a 2D depiction of the city. I will not spend too many words of the game, so to keep it brief, Granada is the last destination of the game that closes Ezio's adventure in Spain. The region of Andalusia also hosts two famous circuits present in video games, Jascario Resort in Gran Turismo 6 and Jerez in MotoGP. The two circuits are the last ones present in my list, so I will let images speak for once. Gibraltar is not a Spanish territory, yet it is physically present in the Iberian peninsula, so I decided to honorably mention the British city present in Call of Duty World War II as a multiplayer map. Here the famous rock can be clearly observed, and the action takes place in the city itself, sieged by the Axis power. The final region we'll be looking at in today's video is the Balearic Islands, with 3 entries, 2 in Ibiza and 1 in Majorca. In the latter isle, Osmi 2 lets players drive freely in Palma, Majorca's capital, in a free yet not quite polished manner. Rainbow Six Siege is set in an unspecified region of Ibiza, where chaos ensues and a team deathmatch begins. I'm not too sure if the nightclub is real, but the trailer does make it a big deal being located in Ibiza, so I might as well have it mentioned here. Lastly, still in Ibiza, Test Driver Unlimited 2 takes a different approach, making the entirety of the Ibiza island explorable by the player. You heard that right, the whole island is remade faithfully and it takes about 20 minutes to drive from end to end. What a game to close off our list. Before closing the video, I wanted to make some honorable mentions of the games set in Spain and Portugal, but not quite in a precise location, most of them being strategy games. In games like Euro Truck Simulator 2, more specifically in the Iberian expansion, the whole peninsula is explorable from Lisbon to the Pioneer Mountains. The same can be said for Microsoft Flight Simulator 2020, thanks to the Iberian update released not long ago, with the only difference of viewing the peninsula from the sky rather than from the highways. Portugal 1111, A Conquista de Source, as the name suggests, is a real-time strategy game set during the Reconquista in Portugal. Here there are not specific places you visit, but a grand campaign to create the first Iberian kingdom. Speaking of strategy games, Napoleon Total War Peninsular Campaign DLC is set during, you guessed it, the Napoleonic War in Iberia. Contrary to the base game, here the Iberian Peninsula is represented in great detail, with over 30 regions to invade or defend depending on the factions chosen. The Peninsular War was not the only conflict that devastated the area. The Spanish Civil War was perhaps an even more cruel conflict that took place in the peninsula in the late 30s. Battles of Spain is a strategy game set during such conflict, where it is your duty to win the brutal civil war with whichever side you have picked. At last, to conclude the list, I wish to honorably mention all Paradox interactive games that have as playable, as ideally expanded upon, Iberian factions such as Europe Universalis and Heirs of Iron. In many Paradox games, you can select any country situated in the peninsula and develop as you more see fit to become the strongest powerhouse in Europe. And there you have it, all games set in the Iberian peninsula and in the various islands that surrounds it. Spain and Portugal may not be the first places that comes to mind when it comes to video game representation, yet as I hope I illustrated today, it is only but an impression. This time I did not have a handy website like the other time, but I had to search many articles and YouTube videos both in English as well as in Spanish and Portuguese, and by no means is this completed. Do you know any game that I've missed? Let me know down in the comments below. If you made it this far, I thank you one too many Iberian times for watching today's video. As you can imagine, this video took me quite a lot of time to make, so it would mean the world to me if you leave it a like, share it and subscribe for more. What contests or geographic areas should I do next? Let me know down in the comments below, and as usual, thank you for watching. Have a wonderful day. Arrivederci.